Hello and welcome to another round of the OAuth Happy Hour. I'm Aaron Parecki and I'm here with Vittorio again.
Hi.
Thanks for joining. So if you are joining us live, we have a fun agenda for you today. Going to share a bunch of updates about what's been happening in the world of OAuth and of course answer questions if you do have any. So feel free to drop those in the chat and we will take a look at those as they're coming in. So it's been a while since our last round of this because there have been some fun events, and then I heard that Vittorio went on a vacation.
I did. I was dedicated to change my color, and so I spent about 14 days horizontal, cooking at the Italian sun, and eating like a pig. And now I'm back, and it's all very exciting. I'm trying to get used to this time zone. So I'm not particularly brilliant yet, but eventually, with a lot of coffee, I'll get there.
Of course.
Did you go on vacation?
Since I have not gone on a vacation yet. That's coming up soon, hopefully.
That's very American of you to work all the time and not go on vacation.
Yes, exactly. Especially during the summer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of my other coworkers are taking summer vacations, so maybe I should take a hint from them.
Yeah, but I had the Todd, the CEO of Okta, asked all the employees to send their vacation plans. It was a nice move.
That is very, very nice. Yeah. Make sure everybody knows that it's okay to actually take a vacation. Yeah. Well, let's jump into the first of our topics today. And I want to hear about the conference that you went to right before the vacation, Identiverse.
Identiverse was the first in-person conference I went to after 15 months of lockdown. And it was absolutely amazing. As in, finally talking to an audience instead of talking to the lens of my Canon, like I'm doing right now. But at least I see you, so you are giving me a bit of a human connection. But normally, doing a webcast and everything with cameras is just not. Instead of it was fantastic to talk to live audiences. And the thing that personally I absolutely was starved for was to spend the time with other identity people.
Absolutely.
Our space is not huge, and we tend the few people that stick with the space, you know them, like Brian Campbell, all these various characters, recurring characters in this play that is identity. They were most of them, not all of them, because unfortunately people from outside of the US couldn't travel, but many of them were there. And so we had the opportunity to hug each other without masks. And it's a talk shop about all. And everyone in the industry dealt with the fact that COVID forced people to work in remote. And as we know, before you can work, before you can study, you have to authenticate. And so pretty much everyone had an extraordinarily busy time in the last 15 months. And so we had a lot of war stories to exchange. And of course, there was also a conference. The conference had a number of really interesting sessions. And it was a hybrid conference because they knew that not everyone could attend. In fact, the number of people was just a few hundreds. But they had very interesting in-person sessions. One of my favorites, for example, was the session that Alex Weiner from Microsoft did about the SolarWinds attack. He provided a lot of background on what went on, how his team worked with that, some considerations about this. It was really interesting. And then there are a number of other sessions with George from Verizon did a really good session about mobile apps and OAuth. Brian did a session on PAR, which was very interesting as well. I had my opportunity to talk about the federated identity and browsers and how those things are colliding, and some of the new API proposals that the browsers people are doing. So it was great. And I had a chance to record a podcast there with Jan Glazer, the VP of Identity in Salesforce, in which we spoke about the industry and similar. And there were many other podcasts, like Mike Kaiser from SailPoint did a really interesting podcast on people that came to identity from different backgrounds. So again, really interesting podcast. We can provide the links to their episodes. So in general, it was a really good moment, and very cathartic. It was healed us a bit. And I have to say that after doing that conference, I'm no longer ready to do multi-day virtual-only conferences. There is the IIW, which this fall is going to be, again, virtual only. And I think it will be the first one in a long time that I'm going to skip, because I refuse to sit in front of my computer for 3 days in a row. 1 day I can do, 3 days I cannot.
3 days of virtual is a lot. Even 1 day of virtual is a lot. And it's so much more draining, I feel like. I feel like being around people gives you just a lot more energy, and then having to just sit in front of the computer, even if you're talking to people online, it's not energizing. So I totally understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, the serendipity is very, you don't have to talk about identity all the time, but if you are at the bar and you are drinking your cognac or whatever is your poison, and you happen to sit with, we've done it ourselves many times, even before the Okta of Zero thing happened. You just sit there and you're talking about your next vacation spot, and then suddenly you say, by the way, did you hear that Daniel wants to ask everyone to use Pixie, even when it's the confidential client? It happens in complete serendipity. It doesn't happen anywhere else, because sane people don't talk about Pixie over alcohol. But there we do. So that is the thing that I miss when we do stuff online only.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, your session, you did a recap on the browser stuff that we've been talking about here, actually, of the browsers making some interesting changes and trying to work on new improvements to login flows, I guess.
Yeah, to how they manage identity in general. Last year, I did this session about what they were taking away, demise of third-party cookies, or bounce tracking protection. This year, instead, I wanted to say what they want to add. Sign-in mechanisms, but also things like how do I decide whether I should keep around the cookies for this domain or should I drop them? And so there's this bit which says this domain is a sign-in domain. So I had just 25 minutes, so it wasn't a lot of time, but I spent that time talking about the new proposals rather than and which is, I think it's an interesting segue to another topic that I think might be interesting in this context, which is we finally founded a new W3C community group, which is the Federated Identity community group at W3C, which was born exactly as a big tent for gathering identity people, like identity vendors, identity providers, and similar, and browser vendors, like user agent people. And that is, it just started. And so now we are barely starting with deciding when to do our weekly call and nominate the chairs and similar. So it's a very exciting time. It's a new, but the idea is that a lot of the things that I touched on that session, we will discuss in this new group, which the hope is that given that we'll be both identity people and browsers, we'll manage to find solutions that work for both instead of being biased in one direction or the other. It remains to be seen if it will be successful, but at least I think it's a very promising start.
So tell me about the community group structure at the W3C, because I know that W3C has a very different organization than IETF in terms of how work gets done and how you can participate. So
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, community groups?
So I'm not very deep into the details because as a good Italian, I'm not good at bureaucracy and administrivia. But what I do know is that in the W3C, there are like two tiers. There is the community group tier, which is a pure discussion place. And basically what happens is that you get there and you discuss proposals, but you don't really do specifications. Like you discuss like scenarios, characteristics that a certain scenario should have in order to meet the goals, define what goals you have and similar. And you'll have like concrete proposals, like some of the things that I described earlier. The API proposals are actually, there are GitHub repos where you actually find some code, or like there are versions of Chrome that preview versions that do have those features. So it's not like it's completely toothless. It's not like pure theory and philosophy, but it doesn't have as an outcome new standards. And there, the participation is just an IPR. Like you sign something that says, yes, I will not do funny business with patents and similar.
I know that's an important difference, is that the community groups are actually open for anybody to join. They're not limited to companies that are W3C members, because W3C membership is very expensive and your company has to join. And it's kind of a big deal to get a company adopted as a member, brought in as a member. So the community groups do not require membership, and anybody can join, either if you're in a company or as an individual.
You are absolutely correct. Yes, that's one big thing. Like as long as you're willing to sign the IPR, it doesn't matter what company you work for or whether you are a freelancer, you can join. Then the next level is actually the working groups. And in the working groups, the components have to be from companies that, as you mentioned, are W3C members, which is a big deal because like it's a significant monetary commitment, and like there is a process for becoming members. But then those are actually working groups that do produce standards, like as actually you end up with specifications, protocols, and similar. And we believe that the community group will possibly create input for working groups, or will eventually be subsumed to some like a wider range. Like one thing that we tried very hard with this working group was to define a scope which is as close to the problem as possible. So the scope is, we define federated identity as the act of externalizing authentication to a different domain. And we focus mostly on what works today based on that. So we will be looking at whether introducing bounce tracking will break SAML, or will break OpenID Connect, or will make some of the flows with OAuth impossible or very hard to achieve. We will not be looking at a very new, or at least we will not give a very high priority to very new scenarios which are just being introduced today, but that on which there are no businesses depending on the business continuity of that scenario. So, but those scenarios do exist and they are interesting. They are simply not directly in the purview of these, or not very high in the priority. So we expect that the thinking that will be done in this federated identity community group will inform others. Like, for example, if we introduce a new API that you need to call in JavaScript in order to secure the ability to save your SSO cookie at your IDP, then we will tell the OpenID Foundation people saying, hey, here there is this new proposal. So as you think about the next version of OpenID Core, please consider that you might need to add something that will call this API at some point. But we will not, in the FedID community group, actually produce version 1.2 of OpenID. There will be a strong overlap, like members that are like myself. I am both member of OEDF and this new group, Brian as well. I hope you'll join as well and similar, but like the work of actually doing the protocol will be done in the various organizations and working groups that are already competent to do that in there.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's good to have a narrow scope so that actual work can get done and it's not just all arguing about what should be the next thing to work on.
Yeah, how to boil the ocean and other interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, and there is one thing that happened at Identiverse that I wanted to mention before we move on from a different topic. And it's something that I'm particularly proud of. And it's this thing. So this thing is the product of literally, I don't know if you follow Reddit, the /shower thoughts, something that you think about while you are showering. Basically, like once I was like thinking about like, okay, when we explain to people how to use OAuth, and in particular which grant to choose, we're really dealing with a combinatorial problem. It's like there's a list of grants, there's a list of application types, and we are just helping people to make the best choice, the best fit between the two. And so I thought, well, what else is combinatorial? Dice. You can have like dice which represent your range of choices. So I thought, like, why don't we do like this? We can make a gamification of this. Actually have a die with application types, a die with grants, a little table which tells you what works best, and then we can make a little game out of it. And so I mentioned this to our marketing, and the marketing said, well, we can make this happen. And so I came to you and I said, hey, what do you think of this? And you were very nice. You gave me a lot of positive feedback. And so basically what happened is we made it. Like this little box is basically a set of dice, which I'm going to extract. Like we have these couple of die, and I don't know if my camera is going to be able to actually, let's see. So here we have like these couple of die in which you can see like the blue one is the application type, and the red one is the grant, and you can just make multiple combinations. And there is a set of instructions, which I'm going to extract here. Ta-da-da. I'm so proud of this thing. This is so awesome.
I love it.
You have like these list of instructions, which basically tells you, here there is this list of basic combinations. They are like all the valid ones. Here there's one which says, beware, if you use the resource owner password, you get the negative points and similar.
Yeah,
it's just a little bit of marketing with Auth0, of course. But the idea is like you can actually throw these dice a few times, and if you just go through the instructions, eventually, just like when you do flashcards for the, I don't know, driving license and similar, eventually you're going to learn. And so we thought it was an interesting thing, and we just built a vending machine. So in the middle of a floor in Identiverse, there was this vending machine, and people could go and like do tweets about it and place like a code, and this vending machine would just move this thing out so that you could grab your swag in contactless fashion, so that in terms of COVID. And I tweeted about it and I placed it on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn have something like 450 reactions and many people saying, I want one of those. There it is. So we are working with the marketing people to find a way of sending an instance of this thing to the people that want it. But it was a fun initiative that I think, I don't know, I found it cute.
It's super cute. It's very great. I love the idea. When you mentioned it to me, I was very excited about it.
Very nice. And tomorrow you are coming over to Bellevue. So my expectation is that we'll manage to give you a few of those boxes. So when you do your events and similar, you can also give them out.
Amazing. I love it. Speaking of giving things out, we do actually have something to give to everybody here who is watching us live. So, and this is a special live only giveaway. If you are watching us live, I want to send you a copy of my book that I wrote, the OAuth 2 Simplified book. So it's just a way to say thank you for watching us live. So I'm going to tell you how to do that right now. It's actually very simple. I'm going to drop a link into the chat, and that is going to be where you can go and enter your shipping info. It's going to ask you for a password, and the password is also going to be in the chat, which, if I can remember what I just typed in, it is in the chat. And I am not saying it on the stream because this is a live only reward. So you can go ahead and it's just a simple form. It's really just so I can make a shipping label for you. There's nothing fancy about it. Just give me your shipping info and I will send you a book. And I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in live. So hopefully you can, hopefully that works. And hopefully I'll see some addresses coming in soon. I'm not going to like email you or call you or anything. So yeah. And Antonio, I see you just got my course on Udemy. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is that Antonio Sanso?
Oh, is that? I don't know. We only have a first
I'm
name.
wondering.
It's Antonio from Brazil.
From Brazil.
A little bit earlier. I thank you for getting the course. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun putting that together and wearing 12 different colors of OAuth t-shirts. Every chapter I had a different color shirt. So
very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun, and I'm still going through and answering questions in the course. So if you do have questions, feel free to use the Q&A thing there, and I keep tabs on those and help people work through the world of OAuth over there. And I hope someday to get those t-shirts available for sale also, but I'm trying to get the logistics of that because I don't want to have to have any stock. So I'm trying to find the right print on demand company to work with for doing that, because I've had a lot of requests for those t-shirts.
Well, and 12 colors is like now I'm really curious to see the range, because finding 12 colors that are different enough must have been on camera.
It was a challenge.
Actually.
It was a challenge.
Pretty challenging, yeah.
I will definitely say it was a lot of fun. I found the right brand of t-shirt that had the right range of colors. First of all, they're really comfortable too, and they're really nice and thin. So.
Very nice, very nice.
Hopefully, I'll be able to get to wear them to events again, because I got them in August when I was doing all the filming for the course. So it was the middle of lockdown. So I've had nowhere to wear them yet.
Well, they're coming. There's a long list of events that are just about to come. In fact, I'm now in the middle of planning travel for the Identity Week in London, which will happen in September. Then there's the European Identity Conference, where I have a keynote, which is also in September. And there is a week between the two. So I'm trying to go to Italy between the two events, because one is in Germany and the other is in London. And then there's Authenticate. Mirror. Yep. It's not mirrored. Authenticate, which is happening in October in Seattle. And just this morning, I got the mail that they accepted my submission. So I'm going to blabber there as well. So those are all in-person events. I don't know if London or Munich, but I really hope to see you in Seattle in October for Authenticate.
Yes. I think I just missed the deadline for submitting to that, though. So didn't get a talk in this year. I keep missing these deadlines. I'm really bad at them.
It's they are pretty strict. The RSA just extended the deadline recently, but otherwise it was crazy. It was super soon. So if you want RSA, it's still open. It's open up to the 22nd.
I might have to do that then, because I do want to go actually give a talk at a conference in person again. It's been a long time, a long, long time.
And RSA in Moscone is really nice. It's like a security crowd that interesting crowd, but the place is fantastic. And also there is like an epic party that identity people go to, which is usually happens right before RSA, and it's legendary. Like interesting things from a protocol perspective happen at that party. So it's the place to be for sure.
Excellent. The IETF meeting is very soon coming up, and IETF, I think it's 111. So that one is, I think, in a week or two, but it is still virtual. So that one is 100% virtual. And
OAuth isn't there, right?
Correct. We don't have any OAuth meetings scheduled for that. We've been continuing the interim meetings as just throughout the year without trying to time them for the IETF weeks, which I feel like honestly has been working out just fine. I don't think we need to cluster around the IETF week for the work that's happening in that group.
I agree, but Madrid, I'm really hoping that we'll actually have. So the next one, I hope
the next
it will
one
happen in person.
In the fall is scheduled for Madrid, and I do hope it actually happens. I do hope that I can go.
Yeah, and IIW, they just announced that the fall version will also be only virtual.
Mostly okay. They're still doing only virtual for that one.
Yeah, but they realized that like they were forced to do virtual for the last 3 ones, and they found that so many more people can participate because it
is true.
So they want to maintain that aspect, but they don't have enough time to figure out the hybrid logistics for fall. So they're gonna do internet only. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't think I'm gonna participate this time because I can't stand another 3 days of Zoom. But and not just that, 3 days of Zoom and 3 days of almost exclusively SSI, decentralized identity.
It's a lot.
Somewhat interesting, but 3 days.
It's a lot. I know. I went to one of the first IIWs that was virtual. I think it may have been the second one, and it was again early in the lockdown, so it was still kind of novel having a entirely virtual conference that had no in-person component. Where I feel like a lot of conferences that were trying to do hybrids before the pandemic didn't do a very good job of it. Anyway, it was a well-run event, I will say. Like, they did a good job of it. But it is just a long time. It's just a long time to sit in front of a computer and pay 100% attention, because there's sessions booked all day for the 3 days, and they're very intense, right? They're very intense sessions, and it's a lot of new stuff going on, and it's a lot to pay attention to, and it is very, very challenging. So I
agree that it's really well run.
Yeah, they did a good job for having to work within those constraints. They did a good job. So it makes sense that they're. Go ahead.
The format is even the in-person format of the unconference lends itself to be virtualized. Let's say that if an audience that was never participated in IIW, the IIW is an unconference, which means that you show up in the morning and you put yourself in a big circle, and then people take turns to go in the middle of the circle and say, I would like to have a session about topic X. And there is a procession of people doing that. And then the agenda for the day is done on the fly. So you don't know what's going to be covered and when until that step occurs. And it's like super messy because you need to give the entire day. You can, even if it's remote, you cannot tell people, let's have this meeting between this time and this other time, because you don't know when the sessions is going to occur. The other aspect is a lot of these things are more discussions rather than presentations. As in, someone says, here we have a problem, and the people that show up are people competent to talk about this problem. So exactly like you say, Aaron, this is super intense. You spend 1 hour arguing, and it's useful, but it's also really tough. And so, and also the prerequisite is that you need to care about the topic. And in the last 3 IAWs which were virtual that I participated in, the percentage of federated identity went down. And in the last one, there was almost none of it. Most of the content was decentralized, which is fine. If that's what people want to talk about, they should talk about it. But the relevance for me, like what my customers ask me to do, or like the work that you do at ITF and similar, there is just like not as many touch points to justify for me to spend 3 days talking about it.
For sure. Yep. The discussion format, the unconference format, again, I really like the format, and it also, like you said, does lend itself well to being virtual, and is also great in person because it is very collaborative. It's a good chance to you don't know what you're going to get when you show up, right? It's literally built as like on the fly, and day 1 is built in the morning. Day 2, the schedule is built in the morning of day 2, and you don't know what's going to happen for the 3 days, which means when you do translate online, while the format does work technically, like you can still have just as much of a brainstorming and session and unconference schedule building. That all works fine. But then you're stuck on your computer having to go to all the sessions, and it takes a lot of effort to attend them because they're not just watching presentations, which is again why it's a good event, but it is just challenging. So I totally don't blame people for skipping out on that because 3 days is a lot. But at the same time, it goes by so fast too because there's just so much stuff to talk about.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward for the spring version, so that like they have plans to like actually do a hybrid. So having like some audience in remote, and it's possible. Like Identiverse was a hybrid event. Let's say that every time there was a session, this session was also broadcasted at the same time, and people could comment in QA and similar. But the thing is, it was a bit isolated. Let's say that the people in the room didn't see the Q&A of people online and vice versa and similar. Yeah. Whereas if you're doing a discussion, of course, you cannot have 2 bubbles, one physical and one online. So they do have important challenges to solve before they can do the hybrid. So I don't blame them at all for their decision to only do online this time. It just happens that different choices.
Yeah, I would love to see a good example of a hybrid conference where the attendees can actually interact across both, which is very much a challenge, but I would love to see a good example of that.
Yeah, and you know what I'd really like to see here? Let me show you. These.
Oh, yes.
Like, I'd really love to see an actual virtual version of this thing. Like, oop. And it is possible. I've been in a couple of online conferences done in AltSpace VR. AltSpace VR is this Unity-based environment, which you have like a pretty basic avatar, and you can build whatever environment you want. And I've been actually in places where they rebuilt the entire conference floor, including the stands, like the expo, which you could go and ask people, and you see like presentations and the demos. It's a lot of work, and not everyone has the headset. But like the headsets are being more and more mainstreamed, because like now with $299 you get a really good headset, like an Oculus. So it's gonna happen, but it's gonna still take a bit before we can actually have a conference in virtual version.
Yeah, definitely. It will require everybody to have one, which is probably a ways out for still.
Yeah, I guess that when Apple will finally show up with glasses, then it will be easier. But for the time being, it's just hard.
Yeah. I still haven't played with one of those since a very, very early version, and it was when it was not good enough, and I got sick very quickly. So
Now you have like right now they are completely mainstream, and there are things that are just like magic. Like there is
okay.
a game from Star Wars in which you have a gym in which you learn how to do the Jedi stuff, and there is a combination of pointing at stuff, like looking at stuff, and using the controller, that it really gives you the illusion that you can levitate objects. It's like it's magic. If it wouldn't be that ruins my hair, I would be in VR all the time.
So actually, on that topic, bringing it back to OAuth, how have the experience of logging into these apps in these environments worked for you?
Not very well. In fact, I am notoriously passive aggressive on Twitter. Every time I get a new app and this app does not use the device grant, I take a screenshot and I tweet about it, and I try to shame them into using the device grant, because with a device grant, it works pretty well. Let's say that
so the device grant's the one that lets you it'll show you like a code on the screen, and then you go to a different device, like your
Correct.
phone or your computer, and actually type it in there and log in there, so you have your normal password manager, normal short keyboard, and all that kind of stuff. So
that's exactly right. So you just see this code in VR, and then you raise this finger, you pull out your phone, and you do your couple of things. Like you just go to an address like bit.ly/myVRApp code. In there, you sign in using your system browser. Maybe you're already signed in because there are cookies and similar. And by entering this code, you close the transaction with the client on the device, and then you don't have to type anything. But many of these apps, they take the paradigm that you do on the desktop or on the phone, and they just show it in VR, which is silly because the keyboards in VR are super hard. I don't know.
Yeah, do you have to like wave around a stick to poke the buttons or something?
So even if you know the password, which I usually don't, because I use a password manager, so I don't know my passwords, you have to like basically use a laser pointer on a keyboard that you see floating in front of you. And what's worse is the password field, instead of seeing the letters, you see the little asterisks, which is nonsensical because no one sees what I'm seeing in VR.
Right.
Well, it's not like someone can be behind me and see what I'm typing. This is a classic example of cargo cult programming, in which people always did something in a way, and they just do it blindly without thinking that in this new environment, it doesn't make any sense. So there is still so much that can be done in that space for improving the experience. And I suspect that it will be done, because if the stuff is not usable, people will not use it. And so the apps will not make money. So I'm confident that things will improve in that respect.
I hope so. I can think of some other interesting flows for that as well, especially with the Touch ID and Face ID. Like imagine if the thing had a Face ID sensor in it, or you had something you could do Touch ID on. Assuming that you've logged in once, the sort of slow way using the device flow, the reauthentication is very quick. Like, you know, I open my bank app on my phone, and I don't type my password in every time. The next time I launch the app, it's like, oh, do you want to do Face ID? And then it's just a quick little scan, and you're good to go. And I could definitely see the same thing happening in this environment too.
Oh, absolutely. Like the thing is that today's headsets don't have yet the eye tracking. Let's say that if you want to look left, right, you have to move your hand. And so there is nothing that can, for example, look at your eye and say, okay, that's you. But they do have something which is actually quite controversial, which is now if you want to use Oculus in particular, you must have a Facebook account. And you sign in the device using your Facebook account. And that is tied to everything, like the notifications that you receive. The App Store like it finds your licenses that way. Technically, you could just have, let's call it a refresh token that applications could use for saying, okay, I know you because you installed this app from the store, and I see that you are actively authenticated. But the challenge to this is that these would tell Facebook what you're doing in every app. And a lot of people are unhappy about it. In fact, when Oculus came first out, Oculus had its own identity provider, and you had like an Oculus account. And then when Facebook bought Oculus, eventually they added the requirement you must use the Facebook identity. So it is a bit controversial right now. It's not as much of a technical problem. It's more of a, do people trust Facebook enough to actually let them own the entire identity experience? It remains to be seen.
Yeah. I definitely say I'm not personally a fan of that because I effectively don't have a Facebook account anymore. I technically I have an account still because I've had one for ages, and I went and I actually deleted everything from it. I deleted all the posts, I deleted all the photos, just wiped it clean, and I left up one post which says, here's all the other places you can find me if you want to get in touch. I'm on all of these other places, just not this one. So that's the only thing you'll find on my Facebook page. And I do not check messages there, so don't try to message me there.
Very nice.
But I would not want to use that to log into things.
Actually, here it's interesting because it can go both ways. Like in my particular case, I am a heavy user of Facebook because I'm a narcissist first. But second, almost the entirety of my social network is in Italy. So my family, my friends, they are all in Italy and they use Facebook. So if I want to keep up with their lives, I have to go there. And to me, it's the opposite, as in Facebook already knows a lot about me. Do I really want them to also know what I'm doing in Oculus? And in fact, instead, if you have an empty account, technically you could use it without much consequence because I guess you could use it anywhere.
That's a good point.
So it's it can go both ways. Huh?
Yeah, I could definitely see. Lost my internet there. That makes sense. It's a good point. I could treat it as it is only used for logging into stuff because there's nothing else there. But
yeah, Facebook
anyway,
doesn't allow you to have multiple users. Like their term of condition is like you have one user and it's you, the real you. So you can have developer accounts, but I suspect that if you try to use it with Oculus, it might not be very happy. So story developing. Also, today, Facebook is basically the only player. Then there is Steam for games. And then there's like mixed reality with Microsoft. HTC was a player in this space, but they kind of I don't hear from them anymore. So I think that the market still has a lot of potential of other players showing up. So it's Wild West now. So we'll see where things go.
And I hope some of them try better user experiences for authentication in VR as well, because I think that's, like you said. Scott had a good point here. So if you are typing in your password in VR and you're seeing the stars, there is one case where it would be useful to have the stars, which is if you are streaming your VR.
That's true. That's true. But they're typically usually just blank the streaming, I do normally for some applications. Sometimes you just say, okay, now you're going to see a black screen because I'm going to do X. So that's a good point. The thing is that very often you see the little dots, but you see the letter when you typed it.
Right.
And also in VR, you see both the screen and the keyboard. So even if you see the little dots, you will see the keys that light up as you point your laser pointer. Right. So, Scott, a good point, but there are still other circumstances that will make that measure useless.
Yep. Yep, that is pretty funny. So yeah, the device flow is a nice solution to that.
I agree. I agree.
Actually, wait a second. That has a similar problem, doesn't it? Because if you're streaming a game and the streamers and the viewers see the code on the screen, they could go log in with that code. And
So
you'll be logged in as them.
they could, but then normally these kind of attacks in which someone logs in, like you log in as someone else, work if you don't know. Like as in, like you think that you are signed in with one user, but you are signed in with another.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, this is all happening in real time. So
it would be very obvious that you were suddenly logged in before you had finished logging in, and you would see somebody else's content.
correct. So here the challenge would be if there is something that is accessible from multiple places that happens to be on your local device, if you sign in as this guy from your device, and this guy in remote could access resources on your device that get unlocked when you sign in with that user, then it could actually do harm. But normally, like today, that normally doesn't happen. Let's say that there is the app, and either the resources are all server-side, or if you are unlocking access to the local app, you still need to be the one operating the device to do something. So I still needed to be the one that has the controller to do something on that device. So even if I'm signed in as you can't really do much. You can trick me into saying, take all the images you have on your device and upload it in this app. And then if you do, then you're gonna get all of this stuff. But you still need to trick me. Which again, I'm jet lagged, so it's not hard. You can easily trick me. But as soon as I'm better acquainted to this time zone, it's gonna get harder.
Yep, that makes sense. That's definitely a tricky one. I guess that's also a problem with the Apple TV implementation right now on all the cable apps and all that. It's the same problem because if you can see somebody's TV from the street, for example, and they start to log in into one of those apps, you could snipe their login and log their TV into your account, which is, again, not a terribly useful attack most of the time. But there might be some interesting situations in which that is a potential danger. Like you were saying, if there's something on the device that can get unlocked or broadcast because after you're logged in.
Or I can think of other if someone the Netflix, if someone manages to sign in as themselves, now they will see the kind of shows that you are looking like. They might not realize that they are using your user, your subscription, but now you do see, if you go on your account, what are the shows that this person watched, which again doesn't look like a big problem, but as soon as you get to this kind of personal stuff, it might be I don't know, best not to do it.
It's tricky because I haven't seen anybody try to solve that particular attack in like the Apple TV, for example, right? Like all these apps do work the same, which is exactly the device flow as written. And I haven't seen anybody try to tackle that problem of what if we did want to make some sort of extra step in the flow so that the user can stop somebody else from logging in on their device.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not sure exactly what you would have to do.
Well, you could do some, if you have a stronger hypothesis about the kind of devices where you'll do this flow, you could do either NFC or Bluetooth.
Oh, yeah.
As in, I'm in front of my TV and it says, okay, I know Apple TV, I sense there is an iPhone nearby, so let me use that iPhone. But which is by no means perfect because my neighbor also have an iPhone and might be listening at the same time, but it's a bit better because at least you don't have the line of sight. Or you could initiate this thing from your device, for example, which again, there are complications. And I think that if you look at what's happening with the mobile driving license, which is using like a flavor of SIBA, you could find some of those scenarios in which you initiate this flow, but not from the device that will get the token, but the other one. So there might be some solution which works ad hoc for the scenarios, but it's messy. It's very messy.
Yeah. Oh, I guess another one is you could ask them to type something in onto the TV that you show on the phone. And you see that, or at least like confirm a number. Because I see that sometimes when I log into things, it says like, is this number the number that you see on your other device?
Yeah, the Bluetooth pairing. The Bluetooth pairing does that, yes.
Yeah, right. So with the TV, after you do the login, the first step of login and finish the OAuth device flow, the next thing it could say is on your TV, is the number 42 what you see on your phone? Because on your phone, it would then be able to show you something that the attacker would not have a way to get to you. So that would break that link.
I sense a new section on the security considerations of the device grant.
That is at least worth a mention in the security considerations of the device grant if it's not there yet. And it is possibly worth a potential solution as well. But I think it's at least worth mentioning. It is a consideration to keep in mind. It is possible for somebody else to log in if they can see that code.
I agree.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, what else? We're almost at the top of the hour. Latest updates in the spec world. I think there hasn't been much activity lately. I think there's a lot of people taking summer vacations like they should. But there is a new version of push authorization requests published just a couple of days ago, actually. And now it is on its way through the rest of the process in the IETF to actually get finalized and turned into an RFC. I think we're actually on draft 9 now. I did look at the diff of this. It is, turns out the change between May and July was pretty much just editorial, which means no functional change. It was just clarifying some of the language. Some of the examples changed. What I did think was notable was, it's all just like minor language changes. One of the things that caught my eye was the examples previously used HTTP basic auth for the client authentication, which is, the client ID, client secret of your OAuth app, which is very normal for most OAuth servers, I would say, do that today. And they changed the client authentication mechanism to a client assertion using a JSON Web Token, which is not a client ID and client secret. It is signed instead. And it has no functional change on push authorization requests, because push authorization request says you should do client authentication somehow, however you're going to be doing that. It doesn't require any particular client authentication mechanism, but they changed the examples to use client assertions instead of client ID and client secret.
Do you want to decode the assertion just for the lols?
Sure, let's do that. Let's see.
jwt.io.
Oh yeah, that is a good website for this. jwt.io. And we should be able to paste the encoded token.
Yeah.
We can't verify the signature, but we can see what is inside of it.
Yeah.
Which is a key identifier. ES256 is the signing algorithm. And then we've got issuer and subject, which match because the client is the one that created the JSON Web Token, not the OAuth server like you would see in an ID token.
Yeah.
And the audience is server.example.com. Let's see if that corresponds to something here. It's not that. So I wonder what that is. I wonder if that is.
We have to bring it up to Brian.
Yeah, I wonder if, I would think the audience should be the authorization server, right?
I agree. It should be.
I would think so. This would be if it was talking to the resource server.
Exactly. Well, or like serverexample.com can play it, but yes, I agree. It should be
Yeah. And then the expiration date, let's see, this expired July 9th. So what do you suppose? Yeah, it's very small. July 9th at 3:14 Pacific time. And I wonder if that corresponds to the date that Brian wrote this change.
Which is likely. And I remember when in my own examples, I had a date which was like really, really old because I just made a cut and paste. And some of the reviewers nitpicked saying, oh, this date is too far in the past. You need to make it more modern. Saying, really? Who is going to decode this thing? But as it turns out, people do like we just did.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, so that was it for the spec. On the spec front, there are currently no interim meetings scheduled at the moment. So we just have the IETF meeting, but there's no OAuth sessions at it. There is a GNAP session at IETF, and hopefully we'll get some more OAuth interim meetings on the calendar soon, because there is a bunch of stuff that is in progress, but not in progress enough to talk about yet, apparently. So.
Yep.
And then, with any luck, Madrid in November, and we'll have an OAuth meeting there, and maybe we'll get some more progress on these specs. I'll get a little boost by being there in person. That is usually how I feel about it.
And above all, tapas. Tapas.
Yes.
Yeah. Spanish appetizers. Let's talk about one cancel.
All right. Well, thank you all for watching. I hope that everybody here got the links for the books that I will mail out to you as soon as we're done here. And thank you for joining. Thank you for chatting with us today. And we will see you again next time.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.